So Laura is a PhD fellow at the University of Oslo, whose work is part of the Lifetimes project. I don't know about that project, but I maybe will be interested to look it up. Her dissertation explores Anthropocene temporalities in video games. She is also the organizer of an environmental humanities reading group in Oslo and an avid horror aficionado to boot. Another one.
Yeah.
there must be a connection somewhere between studies of time and fans of horror. I'm sure there is.
Time is scary.
Yeah, it's true. There's definitely another reading group, I think, in there somewhere.
Yeah, the reading group, by the way, is online. It's not in Oslo. It used to be, but we've, yeah, for the foreseeable future, it's an online thing.
Great. So maybe people
yeah, so I took sort of the easy way out and I've recorded my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen with you and then I'm going to try and get the sound to come through as well. Just let me know if that happens correctly. I also have to say that at some point in the video, I refer to Rebecca Colebrook. That has to be Rebecca Coleman, obviously, but I'm reading a lot of Claire Colebrook, so I got their names mixed up. Becky. Okay, let's see how this works.
I should say the title of your presentation is Temporally Dissecting a Video Game. That's right, yeah?
Yeah, cheers. That's kind of the subtitle now. As you can see, I've changed things up a bit.
Okay, great.
Okay, so you get the screen?
We've got the screen, yeah, and I'm assuming it's already timed, so I don't need to worry about that.
Okay, let's hope for the sound.
Can you hear the sound?
This talk is inspired by a quote by...
That sounds okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Beke. I'm a PhD fellow at the University of Oslo and I'm on the Lifetimes project. So this talk is inspired by a quote by Mackenzie Wark, who once wrote that video games are our contemporaries, the form in which the present can be felt and in being felt, thought through. So in the early days of video game scholarship, the big debate was whether video games were narratives, which work on the level of representation, or rule-based systems, where representation can be overlooked in favor of a sort of ludological substrate of meaning. These days, this debate has blown over, but the question still stands. What are games and how should we approach them? A more recent answer posits that video games are affective systems that can express into structures of feeling in which we can sense the rhythms and emotional tones of new ways of being in the world. Conceiving of video games as our contemporaries undermines the notion of the magic circle, which is a foundational concept in video game studies. The magic circle is a special playground demarcated in space and time where different rules may apply and different freedoms are afforded. Although the time spent inside the magic circle is in some sense virtual or unreal, there is more and more acknowledgement now that the border of the magic circle is in fact porous, and the politics, affects, and temporalities of racism, sexism, imperialism, and petrocapitalism do bleed over into game space. The oil blue is a case in point. Although it looks ancient, this is in fact a futurist game. It takes place after the oil market crash of 2024. You represent a company contracted to revisit old island drill sites where obsolete machinery waits for you to restart production to see if any of the islands can be made profitable again. The future envisioned in this game is a nostalgic, backwards-looking one. Gameplay consists of fiddling around with machine panels in different tabs, stopping and starting the oil rigs, releasing pressure where needed, and performing reparations, all while making specific sales targets. The game luxuriates in the slow, heavy feeling of the machine's interfaces, which are nothing like the soulless tactility of a touchpad. The machines all take time to boot up, and once running, they require varying amounts of maintenance and monitoring. This means that players are always switching back and forth from a number of open tabs, juggling different kinds of urgencies, and spreading themselves very thin indeed. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? We don't need to have worked on an oil rig to recognize this kind of workflow. As Audrey Anable writes, the digital worker is constantly asked to move from one task to another, to juggle multiple and varied tasks simultaneously, and to feel good about this. Video games play an important role as emotional mediators in this process, giving pleasurable texture and meaning to human-computer interaction. In its nostalgia, the oil blue is an expression of petromelancholia, a structure of feeling identified by Stephanie Leménager to describe the grieving of conventional oil resources and the pleasures they sustained. The game's title, The Oil Blue or Blues, refers to a musical genre known for its mournful working songs. What is being mourned here is not the absence of a better future, a future that is different from the past. Rather, what is mourned is the loss of the past itself, its access to oil and the kind of visceral, productive labor that it supposedly calls for, which ironically in this game is just a differently dressed up version of modern digital labor. Despite its orientation to the past, the Oil Blue's rootedness in the present is perhaps even more interesting. In an online review of the game, one person wrote that the Oil Blue is not a political statement, it is pure bliss. The game's appeal rests in its ability to induce the flow state, in which you experience high levels of focus, a sense of productivity, and a distortion of time. Despite being challenging, the Oil Blue feeds you such an abundance of positive feedback that it is difficult to quit. Go on then, what's another working day? They only last a couple of minutes. The experience is similar to that of a Netflix binge, described by Rebecca Colebrook. The flow of Netflix can be seen to create a temporality where the progression from past to present to future is suspended, and nextness or pre-emergence becomes absorbed within a kind of stretched or expanded present. This stretched out present can become a site of safety and pleasure when both the past and the future seem out of bounds, as they do in this very moment, which has been called the Anthropocene. The past turns out not to have been what many thought it was. The ostensible strides of progress booked have been hiding a secret cost: environmental destruction and global inequality. At the same time, the future too seems hostile to us, in the sense that it threatens our survival, or at least the survival of our precious institutions. In conclusion, the kind of temporality invoked by the Oil Blue seeks refuge in a narrowly delineated sense of presence, a presence that is blissful or ecstatic, derived from the Greek ekstasis, or standing outside of oneself, precisely because it seems to exist outside of history and outside of the body.
Okay, so that was it. I'm also posting the link for that video in the chat box, just to for those who want to know about my sources, because they're in the description box of the video.